a bunch of technical nerds that talk very, very high tech. And we wanted to make it easy for sales reps to understand. You already heard kind of the cups and buckets piece. I want to talk about that today a little bit too, but we try to do analogies because that's what homeowners understand. And that's what, I want you guys to be able to bring to homeowners and not get in the weeds. So my first priority today is making sure that we answer your questions, and they can be any questions. As I mentioned, I was in solar for 12 years. I sold both. I had the opportunity to sell Enphase and SolarEdge. There's a reason why I'm at SolarEdge. And it's really because in the California market, one of the major things is SolarEdge can avoid main panel upgrades a lot. And so if you are able to side-by-side proposals, I would recommend taking a look and seeing if you're able to avoid main panel upgrades with SolarEdge. If you're a full Enphase sales rep, I wouldn't, I don't want to ask you to change 100%. I would say just side-by-side it and see if you can avoid main panel upgrades in some cases. Also with batteries, we will talk about that a bit today. But we have the opportunity to stack more batteries without a main panel upgrade because it all sits on the DC side of the inverter. So we'll talk about that a bit. Any questions that are super top of mind for people here that we want to make sure to prioritize before we jump in?
Michelle, I have one for you, and I'm pretty sure you'll probably address this, but the single point of failure through string inverter is what I hear a lot in the field. So if you can maybe address that, that'd be perfect.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it. Any other priorities that we want to cover? All right.
Michelle, I got one.
Yeah.
Enphase batteries, they brag that they're air cooled instead of liquid cooled, so less parts. I honestly don't know anything about your battery.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about that.
I have one more. Also,
Please.
just wanted to, I'm sorry. I know we had talked about previously the car charging capabilities from a SolarEdge. That's an adapter. That's something you could add to a SolarEdge. When I did try to sell those, I had some difficulty getting the parts, and also had some difficulty being able to have it work as planned. So I wondered if that's something that you're still doing, and if it is, how can you ensure that the parts are going to be available if you do sell that?
Yeah, I will say, talk about the EV charger right now. So that is in your proposal with Powur. Long story short, those were sold out in Southern California to other accounts that were had allocated for them. Powur didn't put in an allocation for them, but they are coming in very short order. We have about 2,000 that are shipping to SoCal in the next couple of weeks. So you should definitely, right now what's happening in the proposal is if you select an EV charger, it's just going to automatically submit for an adapter, like essentially a plug for a wall unit. When the SolarEdge EV charger becomes more available in the proposal, that's an actual full piece that's an EV charger. We did sell quite a few of them within the Powur platform towards the beginning of the year, and were able to install them, but then they sold out in Q2. So they will be back online very soon. All right, so let's talk about the technology when comparing apples to apples in terms of a PV only system, and then we'll talk about batteries. What is the current attach rate just on average for this group, just to give just a quick number? Even if it's your personal one, like if you're like, I sell half my deals with batteries, I don't sell that many, just want to get a quick gauge.
I sell, I sell batteries. I won't say I'd say it's maybe 75% of the deals, 60% of the deals.
Great. Okay. So it looks like it's like 30 to 60% based on some people that are, oh, cool, Clayton, so far 100%. That's good. So, all right, let's talk about what it is in terms of PV only. I heard single point of failure and the difference between micros versus optimizers. So I wanted to break it down. First and foremost, it's very important to note SolarEdge is not a string inverter. SolarEdge is an optimized inverter with optimizers. So a string inverter This is what I used to sell back in 2012. You're not really seeing many of them anymore, but essentially what happens with string inverters is the panels aren't optimized. So if there is any shading at all, then the entire string of modules is impacted. Okay, so that's what a string inverter would be. A microinverter scenario, good news, has optimization under each of these modules. But the challenge here is that those inverters that were typically on the wall shrunk down and they put it under each of those modules, right? So that's a microinverter. They're converting under each module. The challenge with that is it can only convert a certain amount under each of those modules before that energy is lost. This is kind of that cups versus buckets scenario, because there's a limit to the amount of energy you can convert at a module level. So let's talk about an IQ8 Plus. Does anybody know the actual wattage maximum that can convert at a module level?
Is it 75 volts, something like that?
So it's 295 watts. So if you're thinking about the module size, right? So let's say you're at a 400 watt module and you can only convert 295 of that at any given time. That module is never going to reach its full potential. Even if you're selling 400 watt modules, that will never reach its full potential with a microinverter solution because that energy is clipped at a module level. So even if it's full sun right at that module, it's going to be clipped every single time at 295. Okay. So the difference with an optimizer solution is we have what we call module level power electronics under each module, just like a microinverter would, but we don't convert the energy there. We instead are only optimizing the roof there. So for one, those modules can reach their maximum potential. And we actually have a thing within optimizers that it's called bucking and boosting. So when one of these modules is shaded here, all these other optimizers are saying, we need to kick it in the ass and make up for that one that is underproducing. So they are actually boosting the production capabilities on each of the other optimizers throughout that system. So we did this technology on purpose. We wanted to have the optimizers on the roof, not converting the energy. And then we wanted to have the inverter on the wall, converting the energy at one central location. That's what a DC optimized solution looks like. We want to convert at one central location on the wall so that we can harvest all of the energy from the roof and be able to convert it in one location. So really quick, I see that Dana has a question, want to answer it. For the homeowner, the best way to equate this is going to equate for the homeowner 1 week of free energy annually, because of the more efficient system. So if you're side-by-siding it, you're going to see in year 1 versus year 20, substantially higher production from a SolarEdge system because of the fact that we're not clipping at a module level. Dana, saw your hand raised.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand what you just said. So, with that information based on this graph here, in this scenario, of the 5 panels, all of them are optimized except for this one panel here to the left. If this panel is not performing at peak, and the others are, how are they optimizing more capacity than the panel has to make up for that one panel? I'm not really understanding what you're saying there.
Yeah, so I mean, this is assuming that this module is shaded here, right? Okay. So the actual flow of this optimizer that would normally be able to push a certain voltage is actually being spread across these other optimizers so that it's making up for the fact that this one can't perform at its highest level because it's shaded.
But again, if the other panels are performing at an optimal level, how can they perform more? It's pushing that excess energy over to this module here. So it's actually flowing through that optimizer and making up for a portion of that module. Okay. Because these are not, it's not converting that energy at all. It's literally pushing the energy wherever it needs to go. It's optimizing those optimizers and those modules on the roof.
Okay.
It's really just trying to push where it needs to go, which is why too, this is a great opportunity for multi-level roof planes, because wherever that sun's at during the day, it's going to be able to harvest energy at its peak level from all of those roof planes at any given time, given the day and the time of day where that sun's at. So in places like, Texas and these markets, I mean, I heard some really big system sizes on this call just now in terms of sales. A lot of times you need to put that on multiple roof planes, right? Most of the time we can't put it on just a south facing side. There's not enough space. So this is very helpful in a multi-level roof plane scenario too.
So another question about what you just said. You had mentioned the string inverters, and I've seen some older systems where they have like Sunny Boy and Fronius inverters that are string inverters. I still see like newer systems with Sunny Boy and Fronius. Are those still string inverters, or are those now optimized inverters also?
So they are still string inverters. There's another, probably the most prominent string inverter on the market right now is Delta. And a lot of those for residential, you can still get them. And if it's a roof that is, has zero shading and is full sun, let's say Arizona, 0 trees, then it's still okay because it's less expensive than an optimized solution, but you're not going to get nearly the production out of it that you would with an optimized solution. Okay, so in terms of,
I have a question about what Dana was talking about, and what you're saying on them and modules that are on a less producing side of the roof. So what I'm hearing too is that if this one is not producing, you're saying that the others will not clip it to. You saying your panels do? I mean, your modules do not clip it to 95. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yeah.
Send it to one that's not producing instead of clipping it.
Yeah, so it's optimizing the entire roof as opposed to having a limit at the module. So if any clipping occurs in our system, in any scenario, it's occurring at the inverter. So whether it's a microinverter, it's clipping at the inverter level on the panel. On ours, if it's clipping at all, it'd be clipping at the inverter level, which is what's regulating the system size. Our inverter, because it's a inverter on the wall, that's what determines the system size essentially on our system.
Okay, and that's what causes it to feed the other one that's underproducing, is what you're saying, because it's not clipping at the panel, it's clipping at the inverter. Right.
Yeah. So we harvest all the energy
cool.
from the roof in one location.
That's actually pretty cool though. If you got panels on like a north facing roof or something, and you're saying so it would feed the ones on the north facing roof if they're underproducing too. Is that what you're saying as well?
If the ones on the side that is a high production at full sun,
right,
if those ones are producing maximum levels, then it will push the excess over to the ones that are underproducing. It's not to say that all modules are going to reach 400 at any time, obviously, but if it has that excess, it will push it over.
Oh, that makes sense to me. So, okay, thank you.
So I thank you for all the questions. I think that this is 100% something I did not know. When I sold SolarEdge and Enphase together, I had no idea. So this is not something you typically learn, but for a homeowner, it's really important because it's 1 week of free energy. And, simplifying it for the homeowner, that's really what it is. I thought I saw somebody in the chat that had confirmed. Oh, yeah, Anthony said that proposals do show more production with SolarEdge than Enphase typically if you side-by-side them in your proposal. Great. So that's kind of apples to apples with PV only. Let's talk about single point of failure, right? So I do understand that piece. And the challenge is you're doing a single point of failure versus a trickle loss situation where if the microinverters are going out, many times you can have 3 to 4 to 5 out before that homeowner is alerted or challenged or before those are replaced. So what happens is that homeowner is consistently then underproducing just at a smaller level. When we're talking to installers in general, the installers that have switched from Enphase to SolarEdge say consistently it's just much simpler to replace an inverter that's on the wall. I can send one person out, it's one piece of equipment, and it's a simple replacement if it needs to be replaced, number one. Number two, I know exactly when this is going out and where the problem is. If I have to go replace it, I know exactly where it's at, and I don't have to do any troubleshooting. And it's really about replacing it as fast as possible. It's kind of like the analogy of, we have one engine in our vehicle, right? Like we have one engine in our car. There's a reason why we don't have four, because we want to be able to diagnose it and replace it when it is needed. And the challenge with the inverter is genuinely the brains of the system. So it's the most critical component of that system. It's the thing that works the hardest. And so we want to have one inverter as opposed to, say, 30 inverters, because, essentially also those microinverters are on the hottest location of that system. They are a lot of strain is being put on the roof. That is where that direct heat is coming from. We want to put the brains of the system in a location that isn't under a lot of strain. And so that's why we have it on the wall. I mean, there's some areas like Arizona, for example, that can't even install microinverters anymore, unfortunately, because it gets too hot on the roof. So that is another advantage of the optimized solution. All right, let's talk about the battery, unless anybody has any other questions or comments you want us to cover. All right. Okay, so let's talk about the battery. Now, you're going to see in the next couple of weeks, this entire consumer-facing promotional material coming out for SolarEdge Home. I wanted to give you guys a brief glimpse. It's not publicly facing yet, but wanted to give you a bit of a sneak peek. And SolarEdge Home is going to be a consumer-facing promotion with videos, collateral, things that we can integrate into your proposal tool so you can use them in the house. And this is going to really incorporate the entire ecosystem of products. So we have that power optimizer, the brains of the inverter, of the system is that inverter, and that's the hub inverter. So I'm sure all of you have seen in your proposal, you have multiple inverters available for SolarEdge. There is the HD Wave, which is standard basic PV only. If you are selling a battery, you have to have an energy hub. Okay, so the energy hub is the battery inverter that you're selecting. And then we're going to talk a little bit in more detail about that and your proposal tool as well. But that home battery is our own battery. We manufacture it. We acquired a top 5 global battery leader to manufacture our battery. And so it's a company that's been in the space for a very long time. We'll talk about that. And then that EV charger that was mentioned, this is that standalone EV charger. I would love to come back to do a training on the EV charger when we have full stock of it, because this is the easiest upsell for a homeowner, is adding 3 kW PV with an EV charger and your EV ready. So I'd love to come back and do that when we have stock, but let's pay attention to the battery first, because that's readily available to you guys and can be shipped immediately. All right, so Energy Hub. So this is that inverter. It's fully flexible. We can add batteries now or later. I know that with Powur, they currently don't have an a la carte option to add batteries at a later time. So recommendation here, we've seen a big spike in sales reps leading with a 2 battery system and then peeling off 1 battery, but really just leading with a battery solution every time, so that you can increase those close rates on the battery system. When we're talking about that inverter, this also has a built-in consumption and production meter in it. So this allows homeowners to see how much solar is producing, as well as how much energy their home is using. So I'm sure a lot of you have gotten the call from homeowners saying, I thought I wasn't going to have a utility bill. And it's because they got a hot tub or they are using more electricity. And it's hard to explain that to homeowners when you don't have that visibility. But production and consumption meter will give them that visibility in that app. So they won't call you for that. They can see it directly. This is how much I'm using. This is how much my solar is producing. So I'll show a graph of that in just a second. These are the sizes of the inverter that you have in your proposal tool. And these are corresponding to the actual system size. Okay, so, and I'm going to put in the chat just a quick math equation. You have all of these in the proposal tool, and all of these inverters, if you want to know the max size that you can put on an inverter, it's always inverter size times 1.4. Okay, so I just put it in the chat, but 3.8 times 1.4, 6 times 1.4, that's going to give you the max size. And what that essentially means is Powur is allowing you to oversize that inverter to 140%. That's going to avoid excess clipping at a system level and will be a really comfortable number for system size. What questions do we have on that one? Does that make sense? Uh-oh, Dana, you're on mute.
It makes sense, Michelle. I have a question for you. So, in anticipation for a customer to add panels later, does it make sense to go with the larger inverter initially, or have them replace the inverter in the event they want to add panels, let's say next year?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We have the opportunity to actually oversize the inverter up to 155%, and 200% with a battery. So if that homeowner had a battery system, for example, and they had a 6 kW inverter with one battery, they could add up to 12 kW of solar on that same inverter, because we can charge the battery with the excess PV that would normally be clipped. So I know that that's a lot of info, but I would say it depends on how much they're planning on expanding the system. So if they're looking to get an electric vehicle, that type of thing, if it's looking like 3 to 4 kW of solar in the next couple of years, I would just opt for a little bit larger of an inverter. I would never go to like an 11.4 if they only need an 8 kW system or something like that. You never want to excessively undersize an inverter. It's just not going to be worth it.
Question. What does max battery power mean in that second column?
Sure. Can anybody tell me the difference between power and capacity? So power is how many things in the house you can power at one time. And capacity of a battery is how long it's going to last. So how much juice it has, essentially. So power is based on the inverter. And it's really how many things can we power at one time. So this is saying that this homeowner on grid has, let's just use the 6 kW, for example, has 6 kW of solar on grid, and off grid, when there's a blackout, they have 6 kW of power that they can throw into the loads in their house for backup. So this is how many things can be powered at one time, is what power would be.
Okay, so just to clarify, this doesn't put any limits on how much backup battery power they can have, correct? Like they can have 20 kilowatts of backup batteries or 30 kilowatts. Is that right?
Yeah, so kilowatt hours would be the capacity. So let's talk about the actual size of the battery. Kilowatt hours. So if you're talking about in phase, it's kilowatt hours. If you're talking about us, it's kilowatt hours. It's 10 kilowatt hours. And that's the capacity of the battery, how long those things are going to last. So 9.7 usable capacity on our battery, and you can discharge that to 100%. So you can drain that battery to 100% of 9.7. To your question, we have the capability of adding up to 3 batteries per inverter. So if your homeowner needed whole home backup, for example, they could add up to 3 batteries per inverter and up to 3 inverters per system. So if they really wanted to, they could have 90 kilowatt hours of battery capacity, 9 batteries, essentially. On one inverter, they can have 30 kilowatt hours on one inverter. So does that help?
Excellent. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
Perfect. Thank you for breaking it down. Appreciate it.
Yeah. We
What
just,
size inverter would that be though?
so I mean, it depends on that. That's based on system size. So 3, you don't want to do anything under a 7.6 inverter with 3 batteries on it. You're just not going to have enough solar to actually charge those batteries. So that 7.6 is kind of the starting point with a 3 battery solution. And then you have the 10 or 11.4.
Hey, Michelle.
Yeah.
One thing that when I was at Semper, we sold a lot of Tesla power walls, and what you almost universally would run into on a whole home backup is you'd have to do a panel upgrade.
Yeah.
You have to go 200 amps, and if you had to, I mean, you'd really have to have a full upgrade, and that there was any kind of like additional circuits that were over 30 amps, things like air conditioning or maybe a car charger or maybe a hot tub, you'd have to do like for an air conditioner, you have to do an AC soft start or some kind of additional to capacity. You mentioned earlier that you don't have as many upgrades with your system.
Yeah.
Would that apply to the batteries where you're not necessarily going to need to get a panel upgrade on, say, like a 30 kilowatt system if you get 3 batteries?
Yeah. So that is correct. And I use this as an example to illustrate it. So I mentioned that we're a DC coupled solution. That's the reason why we call it that, is because everything sits on the DC side. So it's sharing breaker space with the inverter. So let's talk about the 7.6. It's my favorite inverter on our system right now. That takes up 40 amps of breaker space in the main service panel. That's typically the tipping point where, Doug, do you have something? I just saw him come off of mute. So 7.6 kW inverter, 40 amps of breaker space. You can add 3 batteries to that. You have the capability of adding 3 batteries on a 40 amp breaker. Let's talk about that power wall. AC coupled solution. You have also in phase on the AC coupled side. The AC coupled situation, PV system and battery are working independently. So they're taking up separate breaker space every time. So say for the PV, you have 40 amps of breaker space. For that battery, you're going to need an additional 30 every time you have a battery. So if we're talking, let's do some simple math. We have 40 amps of breaker space here on the DC on SolarEdge. On the AC side, you have 40, let's say, on PV. That's about under 8 kW. You have 40 amps of breaker space for the PV system. You need an additional 30 for every single battery you add. So we're now up to 70 amps on the AC side if you have 1 battery. We're still at 40 amps here on the DC side with up to 3 batteries.
So would they have to have a 200 amp service in order to be able to get the 3 batteries? Could they do it with 125?
Well, it depends on how much space they have in the main service panel at that point. Smaller systems, you know, when we're talking about like under 6 kW, a lot of times we can do a 125 with 1 battery, 125 main service panel with 1 battery, 150 with one or 2 batteries. 200 amp service panel is generally safe with that 3 battery solution. So typically, even on a 200 amp, if you're adding more than, with an AC coupled solution, if you're adding more than 1 battery, you're still going to in a lot of cases need a main panel upgrade, unfortunately. So a lot of times you can avoid those main panel upgrades with SolarEdge, especially in a 1 battery solution when it comes to a 1 battery system.
And in that scenario, you'd have to probably, all the circuits would be 30 amps or less, probably, that you could back up. You couldn't back up higher value circuits, right?
We can, in those 5-ton air conditioner scenarios and stuff, you would still want a soft start usually. We are able to back up about 30% more loads than in phase. So we do have a higher capability of backing up more on our inverter. So larger circuits or more circuits, depending on if you wanted more or if you wanted larger. I do have a quick cheat sheet for this group too. One very last thing I wanted to point out is with the DC coupled solution, you have one conversion of energy as opposed to 3. So in a DC coupled solution, because everything's on the DC side, we're converting at one spot. On an AC coupled solution, you're converting 3 different times before we can actually use that energy in the house. So that is a higher efficiency on the battery, as well as, that 1 week additional energy for the solar system. I would highly recommend everybody on the call download my SolarEdge. It's the homeowner facing app. You can do it from your phone, no login required at all. And there's demo sites on there that are real SolarEdge employees that you can see their system and how they interact with batteries, et cetera. So this is really helpful for homeowners too. You can tell them to download it and take a look at the demo sites. Also, a lot of times it gets them excited about their system and how it will interact with batteries, et cetera. So definitely, Clayton has it. Definitely take a look at that. It's a really cool app. A couple other quick features of our battery is we have 2 kind of safety features. One, when that homeowner's in backup mode, they're going to get a pop-up that says we have you backed up, and it's going to tell them approximately how much time they have left on that battery based on the energy usage that they're using in the house at that time. So they will be able to conserve if they need to. And then Weather Guard is a safety feature that takes all the weather satellites in the area and will predict severe weather and will automatically charge the battery to full capacity before the pending power outage. So it'll ensure that they have a full battery for any type of outage scenario that happens. All right, so here's my cheat sheet. I can send this to the group if it's helpful. Really, when we're thinking about battery sizing, we want to think one battery is essential loads. It's those 8 to 10 essential loads that we want to back up, the smaller loads that are critical in the house. 2 batteries would be those essential loads plus a couple of maybe heavier loads. So a lot of times with the 2 battery system, we're seeing like well pumps. A lot of areas need well pumps or window units, portable AC, not central AC, but portable AC and window units. And then the 3 batteries plus would be when those ACs start creeping in, when they start wanting those air conditioners backed up on a whole home piece. But just a quick reminder, we can add up to 3 batteries per inverter, but up to 9 per system. So if that homeowner really does want more than 3, they can do that. I want to answer more questions, but the very last thing I want to say is I would love for you to join our Facebook group if you're a part of Facebook. And we also have Sales Elite if you're not a part of that yet either. So this is a sales only group that we have for trainings, for kitchen table selling tools, that type of thing. And we would love to have this group as a part of it if you want additional training or if you want to hang out with us. We're going to start doing some field trips as well. We just opened up a new facility in Mexico. So that's where most of our equipment is actually going to be manufactured now through our Guadalajara plant for the North America region, so that we don't have to air freight things and we can just drive it straight across the border. So we'd love to take some of this team over there to check out that new facility. Okay, so again, Anthony as well, I'm more than happy to come back anytime, or Dana, come back anytime if you need me to. I know I don't mean to boot Spencer off the list, but I generally like to do these more intimate team trainings than the Powur calendar because they're less intimate. I want to answer your guys' questions, but we are probably going to get on the Powur calendar a bit more as well.
Okay. Yeah, and it's funny because Spencer said he wanted to do another training with us here pretty soon as well. So yeah, we'd love to definitely have you back, especially once the EV is more available.
Yeah.
Do you have an ETA on that?
You know, I'll actually send you a follow-up email. I just asked them for it today.
Okay.
So I will let you know what they respond back to.
Because Spencer's bragging about his EV right now. So
Yeah, I'm not going to talk badly about that EV charger, but you know, you can also just look up the Clipper Creek reviews and let me know what you think. So, Jim, did you have something?
I try to click that unmute button. So tomorrow I'm pitching a 9.6 system with a battery.
Yeah.
So you think the 7.6 is plenty enough for that?
Yeah, let's do a quick math here.
Because I got the
Yeah.
7.6 in there.
That's right.
one
So that can
battery.
go up to a 10.4 or 10.6.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if we do the 2 batteries, you need to move up to the 10 or 11.4.
No, you wouldn't have
Should I do
to.
3 batteries? 3
You
batteries.
can do up to 3 batteries on that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all I got. Thank you.
Nice. Let me know how it goes.
Okay.
Hey, Michelle, I have a question.
Sure.
I was curious, like when at my prior company, but basically what they would say is if you were going with a system that was 10 panels or less, that we were required to use Enphase, but above 10 panels, we could choose Enphase or SolarEdge. They were telling us that SolarEdge didn't, it was too problematic if it was a very small system, like 6 panels or 7 panels. Can you help me understand why that's the case? I didn't really clearly understand why that was true. Is that true? And if it is, why is it true?
Yeah. Frankly, I don't know why that would be their parameters. I mean, we have a 3.8 inverter. So that, you know, that will be sufficient for a really small system. There's a reason why we carry it because it's for smaller systems. So I'm not sure why Semper would have those standards on that side of things, because that is only going to take up a 20 amps of space in the main panel, which is the same as what Enphase would take up on a small system. Our advantages of avoiding main panel upgrades and stuff really become more advantageous for larger systems because we're taking up less space. You're able to put more modules on less breaker space with PV or with batteries. So I don't know if that was maybe the case, but with smaller systems, we can absolutely, you know, install small systems.
Thank you.
Michelle, maybe you already showed this, but do you have maybe a one-page document that shows the conversion of avoiding the MPU? Because I think a lot of times what's happening is, you know, we as salespeople, we don't really know if that customer is going to need that MPU, and we're pushing the Enphase micro inverters. But if the SolarEdge is a much better solution for the customer to avoid that MPU, do you have something that we could look at or study that shows us, you know, what that scenario looks like?
Yeah.
like, you know, cheat sheets.
I made a calculator, like a little automatic calculator for Powur last year. Let me dig that up because that worked really well, and it essentially would highlight no MPU, yes MPU type thing. So I'll send that over. Let me just take a quick note that I need to dig that up. That would probably be most helpful. You could just put system size in and it would calculate it for you. Okay.
Bo says he just posted it in chat.
Let's see.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh, Bo, you've been hiding it this whole time. Yes, this is it. Yep, that's the one.
Haven't my saved.
Good
bookmarks.
one.
Bo's been hiding it this whole time. We've been out here struggling.
I shared it with the team a long time ago.
You're just letting them sell Enphase.
Yes.
Jeez, Bo.
Bo has just always got the tools, though. He's always prepared.
Yeah.
He's
Great.
Mr. Organized.
Thanks for sharing it. This is good.
So Bo's not invited to Guadalajara. Is that what you're saying?
He's holding
I
out.
am now that I've shared it, right?
Right. He's getting the first ticket, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to come back. Let me know if you need anything specific, and I can make sure to address the specific needs. I did put my email address in there if you need anything. Yeah,
Michelle, maybe if you want to share your screen with that that calculator there, and maybe just walk us through the teams, kind of how to use it, so everyone kind of understands how to use it.
yeah, let's do this. Okay, so what you have to fill out are the yellow pieces. So this is all you really need to fill out is the number of modules, the module wattage, the bus bar rating, and the main breaker rating. So the bus bar rating is going to be on the door in the main service panel, and the main breaker rating is that one right at the top. They're actually both going to be on the door. If you did look at the specs, they will both be there. The homeowner can even just get that for you. And you'll be able to get a calculation. So if I change this to 200, I have view only access. So Bo has locked this for all of us as well.
Bo, all of us, mine's that way too.
Michelle, also too, if we are lucky,
I'll
we
change
can
it.
see that information because most of the main service panels, the paper inside on the door is jacked up.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, you can also see the main breaker right on the breaker itself. We will have to get those numbers eventually. So at the site survey, they're going to have to get those at some point as well. So, you know, hopefully that is something that we can get at the consultation, or the homeowner can take a picture of the sticker. But it is something, you know, they would need for a site survey or a final design.
So I just went to a site survey a few days ago, and I found out that if you really need to know, take off the front cover.
Yeah.
Covering the breakers. I mean, if you're feeling brave, there's just 4 screws that hold it on. You can look behind it on the very top, and that'll tell you exactly what you want to know.
Good point. All right, let
I
me
like how
refresh.
Dana was nodding his head no to that. Well, nope, not doing that.
Yeah, just don't ask the homeowner to do it. We never want their hands in electrical. But okay, so I have edit access now. I think everyone hopefully should. Thanks, Bo. So you have a selection down here for the bus bar rating. You have a selection for the main breaker rating as well. So it also will give you an alert. So say, for example, if you put a bus bar of 125, it would tell you this is not possible. Just because a lot of times the main breaker and the bus bar, sometimes we get them mixed up. The main breaker always has to be either equal or less than the bus bar. The bus bar has to be a higher number. So it's going to throw that out for you. But you can just iterate on this if you need to change these. The thing with SolarEdge 2 is that, am I even sharing my screen? Yes. The thing with SolarEdge 2 is
It's loading right now on my end.
Let's see. There we go. We're not impacted by the size of modules. So you're able to put a substantially higher wattage module on our system without any main panel upgrades. When you start getting into higher wattage modules with Enphase, because you're using a higher powered microinverter, it's requiring more main panel upgrades. So if you've seen that your main panel upgrades have increased after switching over to a higher wattage module, that's why, essentially. All right. Any other questions? We covered a lot. Let me know if you need anything. And I have my email address in there. Would love you guys to be a part of the Facebook group or Sales Elite. And I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate your time, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.